Harlem Renaissance is one of the first important movements of African American artists and writers. In the U.S., Harlem, New York was a main rising area for writers or musicians. This decade created more styles and tones in literature and music. During the Harlem Renaissance, a new style of music called jazz was created. The Brock sisters were one of the first sister singing groups starred on Broadway and other musical performances. Louis Armstrong started out in Fletcher Henderson's band that played in Chicago. He later became a great jazz soloist. He played the trumpet with a distinct dramatic rhythm, and his voice was good enough to be compared as a musical instrument. Throughout his career, he performed in jazz clubs along with on the radio.
Duke Ellington began playing the piano at age 7 and started playing professionally around 17. Ellington made hundreds of recordings. He played on the radio, in movies, and even toured parts of Europe. When he played his music, he created a calming mood with a combination of musical instruments. The Harlem Renaissance was a huge opportunity for black writers. During this time, Edith Wharton, F. Scott Fitzgerald, Ernest Hemingway, Jean Toomer, Langston Hughes, and Alan Locke had their careers take off. Edith Wharton was a famous woman writer, wrote many great literary pieces, won the Pulitzer Prize for her publishing The Age of the Innocents.
F. Scott Fitzgerald named the 1920s the Jazz Age. Fitzgerald wrote novels and many plays that were performed on Broadway. He had a clear, colorful, witty style that brought emotions alive in his writing. He met Ernest Hemingway in Paris, where Fitzgerald revised The Great Gatsby.
Ernest Hemingway's career took off during the Jazz Age also. Hemingway helped Fitzgerald capture the culture and the new tones of the era in his writing of The Sun Also Rises. People throughout the nation found a connection to the story.
Jean Toomer was another great writer during the Harlem Renaissance time, and also a philosopher. He wrote poems, short stories, and introduced the idea of idealism philosophy. His famous supporting quote was, "In life, nothing is only physical. There's also the symbolical. White and black, east and west, north and south, light and darkness. In general, the great contrast, the pairs of opposites, and I, together with all the other I's, am the reconciler."
In 1924, Hughes was discovered from his writing of poetry. Hughes wrote a famous essay called The Negro Artist and the Racial Mountain. He enjoyed spending his free time in jazz clubs to be inspired. One of Hughes' famous novels, Not Without Laughter, rewards him in the Harmon Gold Medal for Literature. He wrote anything from TV scripts to plays and even novels.
Alan Locke was very important to the Harlem movement. He was a famous editor of plays and other literary works. He helped create new perspectives beyond white culture as a result from his exposure to various dance, music, and art. As you can see, the 1920s was a great chance of opportunity for creativity.
George Herman Ruth, or best known as Babe Ruth, is one of Major League Baseball's greatest sluggers. He lived from 1895 through 1945 and played baseball through 1914 through 1935. He originally played with the Boston Red Sox as a starter pitcher and left in 1919 to the New York Yankees and started as a right fielder. Later on through his career, he played with the Boston Braves, and then for a year he retired from baseball. He is the very first one to hit 60 home runs in one season. Harold Edward Grange, also known as Red Grange or the Galloping Ghost, was a college and professional football halfback. He played for the University of Illinois and the Chicago Bears. He was introduced into the Football Hall of Fame in 1963 and was nominated by ESPN by one of the greatest college football players ever. The Black Sox scandal was an incident that took place during the play of the 1919 World Series. 8 members of the Major League franchise were banned for life for baseball for initially losing games. Charles Arnold Chick Gondel was the ringleader of the plot and managed to seduce 7 other players to follow him. Eddie Sacote, Fred McMullen, George Buck Weaver, Lefty Williams, Swede Risberg, Oscar Happy Felch, and Shoeless Joe Cleveland.
The following pictures are films that were very popular during the 1920s. Early silent movies were often accompanied by live piano or organ music. 1923 was the year commercially disturbed films contained a soundtrack that was photographically recorded and printed on one side of the strip of motion picture films. The first movie theaters were called Nickelodeons and were thought to be magical and mysterious places.
Talkies are films that include dialogue, music, and many other forms of sound. They attracted a great deal of public commentary and concern. Talkies reshaped the motion picture industry and had an impact on technology used to record and play back audio material. People opposed talkies and believed that it was dishonoring the purpose of a silent film, but it later proved to be unstoppable by taking over studios and theaters.
The actors and actresses of the 1920s weren't always viewed as top-rated celebrities, meaning that if they saw them, they wouldn't overreact and fall to the ground like some cases today. A couple actors and actresses of the 1920s were Bridget Helm, Robna Ralston, and Harold Lloyd.
Fads and crazes were crossword puzzles, talkies, and clothing. Multimedia was very popular. Magazines and radio broadcasting were the mains. Men mainly wore flare pants, sweaters, and jackets. Women dressed as flappers, wearing flashy and very tacky clothing.
Dance marathons were originated in the early 1920s. The dance marathons were a giddy, jazz-age fad for competition like flagpole sitting and six-day bike races. The dance marathons were banned from many towns and were found to be disturbing, disruptive, and repugnant.
The flappers were the 20s theme activity. The flappers had begun when young-aged people started to model on movie and sports stars that represented new age. And so the new youth culture had called them flappers of chic. They were stereotyped as short bobbed or shingled hair, straight, loose, knee-length dresses with the dropped waistline and silk rayon stockings with garters, heavy makeup, and long beaded necklaces.